My name is Gustavo Castro. Maybe you attended the AI workshop that I did yesterday, or you're here for the AutoCAD session in the morning, or maybe I am your SE and we have worked together, but if we haven't met yet, I'm a solution engineer in our local government team, and I am based in Minneapolis. I talk about a lot of different products, right? Like even here, just jumping from AI to AutoCAD to data pipelines. I'm not really a specialist in any of them, but this is supposed to be like an overview, things to consider, like is data pipelines the best tool for what I'm trying to do and kind of what I can do with that tool. Is anyone here currently using data pipelines for anything? Oh, okay. So I just want to make sure that there were no like advanced users looking for something else. Here's the agenda. We're gonna, do a quick overview, like what it is and what it's for, and then talk about some use cases. One nice thing about data pipelines is that you can schedule the task to run at a certain interval, so we can take a look at that too. Talk about what's new and, some time for questions. So these are some of the questions that if your answer is yes, like data pipelines would probably be a good option to consider. So if you're trying to, bring some data to your organization and it's hard to access, so I work with cities and counties, especially cities trying to get some type of data from a county. That's the most common example that I see, but it could be a county from getting data from the state, or if you're in the private sector, maybe, getting data for like showing something to a customer. But again, if it's something that you have to request and then get some type of file and then that's out of date and you have to request it again, that's probably a good use case. So another one is if you spend a lot of time, you get the data and then you do some changes to that data, maybe you add a field, maybe do some calculation and add to that field. And then maybe you have to do that again at some point, the data changes, or you have to add another field. So if it's always changing, you spend a lot of time doing those prep workflows, that's another good reason. And the last one, I kind of mentioned this a little bit, if it's frequently being updated, you kind of have to go that process over and over again, right? So it's better if you can to connect to the data directly and then, do what data pipelines can do and then kind of save that to our organization. And then I mentioned the scheduling already. You can kind of put that in a schedule and then kind of automate that a little bit. So if you, maybe you heard about data pipelines, maybe you just thought like I'll show up at this session and learn a little bit about what this is. Data pipeline is a relatively new product, maybe a couple years old, maybe 3, I don't know. It's kind of hard to remember exactly when these things were released, but definitely not more than 3 to 5 years old. It's this no-code visual interface similar to Model Builder or any kind of drag and drop interface where you can create a chain of events. So the main benefit is allowing you to do some of these things that I already talked about without writing any code, right? You just kind of drag and drop and do the configurations on the side. It's also native to GIS, right? So it's not like you're doing ETL in another tool that maybe doesn't understand like the spatial data as well as GIS does. So that's another good thing about it. But the last two here are the most important. It's expanding access to data sets that maybe it's hard to get, like we talked about. And then also being able to automate kind of getting that data or getting updates to the data. You can see on the illustration there, there are a number of different places where data can live, right? Those are called inputs in pipelines. So you can have different types of inputs, and that's how you're going to expand your access to data by being able to connect to, something like Databricks, Snowflakes. I feel like I forgot to say that I work with the larger counties and cities, so like Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and that's something that I hear more and more about their data science or IT team using some of those data warehouses, and then they kind of trying to work with it too. So here are some, just some ideas, like more specific, like things that you might be doing this now, and then how you could do that with data pipelines. So a lot of manual kind of CSV export, import. you can automate that. Notebooks are great. I'm going to be using and hearing more and more about that, but you have to know how to use and write some code there. The Python, ETL, kind of same thing, and it's a lot of maintenance sometimes to maintain those. So it just kind of improves all these workflows on the left side, the way that's being described on the right. So if that sounds good to you and some that you can use, here are the requirements to have data pipelines in your organization. There's nothing really special that you need. You just need to be at a certain user type and have the necessary privileges to use it. So if it's creator, professional, professional plus, you're good. Just make sure that you're not like, with an editor role. You have to be like a publisher and above. And then these are the specific things that you need access. So if you try to use and for some reason you can't and you're not the administrator, talk to either your Esri team or administrator, and it can kind of help you figure out what you need. And Data Pipelines has been ArcGIS Online, right? I said maybe like 3 years ago that was released in ArcGIS Online. It was not an enterprise. There is no, again, additional fee. The only thing is that Data Pipelines, when you create a new data pipeline project, it creates, spins up all that computer resource that you need to run that. So you're basically being charged credits because you have this dedicated environment that you're working on. And as long as you're working on the environment, you're going to be charged by I think it's hourly, but then there's increments of minutes. I don't know. You can click documentation. There's a little button on the application that you click that shows how the credits are charged. But it also charges if you schedule something. The nice thing about when you schedule something, it's not charging the whole time. It's just while that tool is running. But yeah, the credits question always come up, and so it's kind of two different rates here. One for the interactive when you're building things, and one when it's being run on a schedule. And then on Enterprise, it's included with 12 Advanced, so I don't think a lot of people are at 12 yet, and it's in beta, right? The nice thing is that it doesn't consume credits, but again, it's still in beta, and you have to be at that 12 version. And then it's, you have to install, license like a server and role, and then federate that with your enterprise deployment. So let me jump out of this and open. So here I'm in ArcGIS Online organization, and the way that I would find it, right, I go to the app launcher here, and I find the data pipeline icon. I click there. Just a quick demo of the interface if you haven't played with this before. So here I can only do two things. I can either three things: create a new data pipeline, open an existing one, and I have this page here to manage everything that I have on a schedule. When you go to one of those projects specifically, you can do some tasks there, some scheduling tasks there, maybe change the interval. But when you want to look at all your scheduled tasks at once, here's where you would go. So if I go back to the gallery, and if you click on create a new one, it's going to take maybe a minute here because, again, it's creating all the resource that you need to run. So let me see if I can, I'll go back here because I don't really want to create a new one. I'm just going to open this one to save us some time. I didn't get too creative on the demo here. It's hard because there's always a mix of people. If I pick something it's very specific for land records, then there's people in utility that can relate. So this is just kind of generic Esri demo with some Fairy data. But it's taking a while here to open. Once it opens, we will just look at what you have on the right side, kind of how things look like, and then later I can show you how you can build something simple like this. While this is opening, there are tutorials like this one. It's about an hour long, and if I go all the way to the bottom here, you can see there are a lot more tools being used in this one. I think I only have 2 tools, and then it writes to an output feature, but this one has a lot more going on here. I didn't want to get too fancy like this because it would take us a long time to explain all the steps. But if we go back here, it's almost done. I want to click on refresh, but I might regret that. So maybe let's go back to slides for a second, and then I'll come back here. So this is something I was actually debating, like, you know, if I would show the demo first and then talk about the different pieces, or let's just talk about the different pieces, and then when we go there, maybe it will help make more sense too. So you have these three things similar to model builder, again, inputs, the tools, and the outputs. The inputs are used to connect to those data sources that I showed in one of the first slides. The tools, you know, just like a geoprocessing tool or like a filter, anything like that. And then the outputs, it's when you decide to write that to your ArcGIS organization. So the inputs can be like several different things, right? And if you look, I'll just open all of them at once. But if you look at the JS content, things that we're all used to working with for the most part, that Parquet one, it might be a little newer, but you know, feature layers, tables, CSVs, and then when you get to the data warehouses, those are the ones that are supported. Again, I said I keep hearing about snowflakes and Databricks on the organization that I work with, and then cloud stores, that's the popular one too, Amazon and Azure being the main ones, and then these are the specific file formats that are available. So, you know, if your organization is storing some data on Amazon and it's one of these formats you want to bring to GIS, data pipelines would be a good way to do it. And another good example, it's connecting, again, the city, county, state workflow, and you know, sometimes they have like an open data hub site that you can find different services and you're trying to bring that. Data pipeline is a good way to connect those URLs and bring the data. So this is kind of, you know, I think this really helps you understand what data pipelines can do, because the first thing is like this data is hard to access, right? What's the best way? And you can do it, but once you get the data, most likely you're gonna wanna make some changes, and you're not the data owner, so you're not allowed to change. You know, if you grab like a URL from an open data site, Data Pipeline has a bunch of tools that allows you to kind of on the fly, you know, create a new field, do a calculation and add to that field, and all these other things, right? Maybe you get the data for the entire county, you just want it for your municipality, you want to filter just to that extent, you can do that. So it's about accessing the data, but also all these processing tools that you can do on the fly without owning the data. And then when you save that to your organization, you have just what you need, right? It can be also simplifying the data set. Sometimes you have a dozen attributes, you only want 2. You know, if it's a large data set, you save some storage and things like that. But these are the main categories. When you open the interface, I'll show in a minute here, you're gonna see data for cleaning, formatting, constructing, and integrating things. So a lot of this sound familiar. I think all of them, right? Clipping things, filtering by attribute and extent, and yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything that's specific data pipelines, but they're, you know, join, merge, all kind of typical GIS tools. So the outputs, they're written to a hosted feature layer or table. You can have one or many in one data pipeline, right? Maybe you connect to this data and one department wants to see it in one way, the other department wants to see a different way. Like you can have several outputs. Or maybe you want to save one with like all the attributes and one that's simplified. Like you can have more than one output in one data pipeline. Sometimes it might make more sense to have 2 different data pipeline projects if you know what you're trying to do is very different. And then you can create, override, replace, or add an update. When you drag and drop your output, you're gonna give it a name and everything, but then you have to choose like what do you want to do. You know, this is a new feature that you're creating, so you're gonna create it. Or is it an existing one that you want to override, replace, or update to it? Okay, so let's go back there and see if we can. Okay, so it opened, and you know, if you want to simplify everything here, this is kind of cleanest view. You have the model here. In this case, I created, right? If you're opening for the first time, you just be kind of blank screen. You have your navigation tools here, and then the button to run this. But then on the left side, if you expand, you have your inputs, tools, and outputs. If you want to write some notes or you are ready to save this, you can use those. And then I said that you can access the kind of scheduling for, you know, a specific data pipeline. So this one, I'm only looking at the scheduled task for this specific flow here, right? And I configured this, you can see right before lunch. And then I just said, run only 3 times. You ran out 3 times, they're successful, so everything is working here. Now, if I click on inputs, then I see all those options there were on this slide. The database, the cloud storage, the files, the tools, the same thing. All those categories: cleaning, constructing, formatting, and to integrate with other. And then the outputs. So what I did here to create this, it was just, I went to input. In this case, I'm connecting to something like from the Living Atlas. So I just did a file, and I said browsing existing. You get this dialog box. In this case, it's not stored in my content. It's something that's in the Living Atlas. So I go here. And then let me see if I can remember, oh, no, sorry. It was in ArcGIS Online, not Living Atlas. Here it is, the data. So I select this one, edit. Another nice thing about data pipelines, you don't have to run this before you see the results, or to check if things are working. You don't have to go anywhere else. You just click on this preview button, and then it will give you 4 different ways to preview the data. First, you can look at the table, understand the attributes, everything that's included with this data. And then you can look, something's just really slow here right now, but there is a map option where you can see the dots or the polygons or the lines on a map. So let me go back to the table. So here's the table. Maybe there is something here that's in inches, and I want to change that to centimeters. I can add a new field using one of those tools and do the calculation, kind of convert those units. But first, I have to understand the fields that I have available. Here's the data. Here's the schema. So if I want to kind of understand, again, the attributes and see if I need to add anything else. And then here's just some messages that you got when you connect that. Then the next step, I select a couple of tools. I filter by attribute, and then select fields. Again, I don't want to use all those attribute fields. I just want a subset. So first, I want to refine, eliminate some of the features, and then I want to eliminate some of the attributes. And then there are different ways to connect these things. You can either come here and pick a data set and it will automatically connect for you, or you can just drag and drop the arrow. And then the output, just added a feature layer. That's the only one. And then here's those options like create, update, replace. They're here. So after that, you just, and for each step, you can kind of preview things. You can come here and preview this to make sure that everything worked. Otherwise, you might get an error message or something if it's not working, but it looks like it worked. We're almost out of time, so that's kind of the quick overview. If I want to run this manually, I would go here now that I configured everything. And if I want to schedule, I would go here. In this case, actually, let me just click on, I can create a new one, or I can edit this one. So you can see you can do minutes, hour, day, week, or month. The shortest interval is 15 minutes, so every 15 minutes this can run. It's not like a real-time engine like Velocity or GeoEvent that you can do every second, right? But 15 minutes is pretty good for most scenarios. So if I go back to these slides now, don't have much more here, but there are some use cases. I'm going to go through this fairly quick. The first one is integrate data from the cloud. So it allows you to connect to the most common ones, and you don't have to create any complex process to get that data. Clean up the data is another one. I talked about this a little bit, and the example kind of showed this, right? Filtering by attribute, and then eliminating some of the attributes. Here's if you have a table, it's very common for departments to have a table like in S3 or in Azure, and it's just a table, and you want to make that table, you're going to see spatially. It has tools here to help you build that geometry, and put it on a map. And then open data, I kind of mentioned this pattern too. If you want to access something that's stored like a CSV or a JSON on the open data site. And maybe in your organization too, just to, data's there in different systems. If you want to kind of bring them together, it might be a good option for that. So the scheduling and automation, I already showed the demo. But again, it's nice that's built in the product. You don't have to go outside, and look for things, and then kind of learn how to bring it to GIS. Again, this is important here, so I'll say one last time to consider if you want to create something new, add or update or overwrite. But I'm going to make sure that we have time for at least one question. These are additional things, right? Data pipeline is not going to be for everything. And in one of the first slides, I showed how we could improve existing workflows. Maybe you're writing notebooks, and it's something that can be completely done, in data pipelines, so it might be a better place. But sometimes data pipelines can do part of the job, and then you do need to write some Python code in a notebook and have run the data pipeline for you if something is more complex. Other options are like the Power Automate connectors and workflow manager. But yeah, data pipeline is the easiest way to kind of bring that data from all those different sources that I mentioned. I think the key one here is the enterprise. Again, if you're using Snowflakes, you can, now it's supported for the authentication, but the enterprise is kind of the big one here to know. It's still in beta, but it's available in 12. And then this is what was probably released yesterday, and then the kind of the future roadmap. I think we have 2 minutes. Any question? I think this was the last one. There's some resources here that I can share, but. Okay.
Where can you see the credits that it uses?
Yeah, so if you go to, there is a understanding credits page in the documentation, and then there's a table there that says the rate for a hosted layer, and then there is information there for the, creating a data pipeline project or the schedule. You can also access that if you open data pipelines and let me see if I can quickly do it here. Trying to remember where I saw that. Yeah, I'll take a look here and maybe I'll show you in a little bit. But are there any other questions? There's a button here, like information, but they'll say 50 credits per hour. I think it's the rate.
So forgive me, I'm still a little new to this sort of intermediate level GIS work, but I'm trying to sort of wrap my brain around the general mission statement of data pipelines in general. And so it sounds like a more online integrated build of Model Builder fundamentally, or is there something I'm missing out on?
Yeah, Model Builder has a lot of additional analytical tools, right? Data pipeline, it's kind of a web-based simple ETL tool that allows you to extract the data. Huh?
ETL?
Yeah, allows you to connect the data, transform the data, and then extract it, save in a. It's not ETL you don't know what ETL? Okay, extract, transform, and load. Yeah, so it's very common, for organizations to have some ETL workflow where they need to get the data from a place, do some transformation, and load to their system. And this is the easiest web-based application to do that.
Thank you very much, Gustavo.
Yeah.